Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. We have a motion to approve the agenda as it's written. I have not seen any changes.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda as it's written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Okay. So this is a part where I say my piece during public comment. Obviously, we have some folks here. This is the only time that this board will recognize any public comment. So at this point, whoever would like to start, we do about 2 minutes apiece if it's one at a time. So, go ahead, Charlie.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Moyle Union High School Theater Department or wherever they work for a wonderful show they put on this weekend. It was super. I talked to members of the community and they shared that sentiment. We were extremely impressed. And I grew up in New York City and they had the theater district. Casting was great. And I'd like to compliment not only the cast, which was outstanding, but the crew behind them. Frankly, all the way down to elementary school, because these kids have to be raised somewhere. I assume most of them matriculated through the elementary school into the high school. I want to point out that I was really, everybody I'm sure was impressed with Willy Wonka, especially the way he carried off an item called a patter song. He had a very short piece in one of his songs. They did a patter song, which is similar to what goes on in Gilbert and Sullivan. It's really difficult to do. And he carried it off perfectly, and I'm super impressed. So, happy with you on that score.
Thank you.
Then I guess we've prepared something related to the October 14th discussion. I don't know if Bart wants to read it on our behalf or if you'd like us to read it.
That's totally up to you. If you want me to read it, I'm happy to.
That would be great, thank you.
Right, so I think this went around, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll stand up so I can project, and please let me know if you can't hear me on the.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear?
Can hear you.
Okay. All right, so I'll try to speak loudly. Dear LNMUUSD board members, the school board is meeting on Monday, November 11th to discuss the FY26 budget. Given recent discussions, it is vital and necessary that the people served by the board provide public input to ensure all perspectives, impacts, and voices are heard and understood. We represent the towns of Belvedere and Waterville, 2 of the 5 communities in the Royal North, and we are concerned with the comments made by board members on October 14th, 2024, suggesting the consideration of small school closures. Given the size of the Valley Schools, Johnson and Hyde Park, and recent investments in the Eden Elementary School, it is not far-fetched to conclude that these comments pertain to the Waterville Elementary School. Thus, we offer the following concerns and recommendations. Requests for information that will facilitate thoughtful planning are italicized. Concerns: geographic isolation, local differences in access to services caused by distance, topography, and climate lead to increased financial and logistical burdens for residents of Waterville and Belvedere. These significant factors must be considered when weighing local impacts of district-wide decisions on the daily lives of the students and families you serve. Closing a school in an isolated rural community would hinder equitable access to public education. Among other relevant socioeconomic factors, there are many families without vehicles, who share vehicles, and/or cannot afford to add dozens of commuting miles to a day. There are those who do not have the additional time to add travel while maintaining a safe, healthy, and supportive home environment. Further, 3- and 4-year-olds are not permitted to ride the bus. As seen during the pandemic when our preschool program abruptly ceased, impeding access to preschool program through distance has a detrimental effect of early education, a critical growth period which can have lifelong impacts. Morality is a social determinant of health, and is also correlated with educational outcomes. While all communities in the district are considered rural by many measures, Waterville and Belvedere could be considered the most remote. To exemplify this point, it should be noted that future use of the underutilized and now abandoned Belvedere Central School building has come up several times during board meetings. Consistently, remoteness and transportation are named as barriers to district-wide utilization. We want the board to understand that remoteness and transportation are just as formidable burdens for community members as they are for staff and administrators. The public requests that full board meetings are held in impacted towns in order to equitably acquire public comment. Equitable stewardship. Decades ago, Belvedere and Waterville made the decision to merge schools. We faced the economic reality and made a fiscally conservative decision despite fears about negative community impacts. In the time since that merger, our two towns funded and administered the school responsibly, with minimal administrative overhead, while creating a school community with educational outcomes we were all proud of. Last year, in order for the broader community to find cost savings and pass a budget, we sacrificed space, increased classroom sizes, and allowed the preschoolers taught at the Belvedere Central School to be moved to the Waterville Elementary School without protest. We merged our classrooms to accommodate. We now have grade 1, 2, grade 3, 4, and grade 5, 6 classrooms, in addition to a preschool and kindergarten room to provide the best start for our youth. We again took a pragmatic approach, and our community has grown stronger and more resilient because of it. We have done our part. We are capable of making hard decisions for the betterment and prosperity of all, and have sacrificed for our local community and broader LNMUUSD community. We cannot ask more of us. School closure is where we draw the line. Our towns, our community, our families, our children will not be sacrificed. We merged, we made concessions. Now it's time for the administration and other schools to do the same. We insist on school board decisions rooted in equity, equality, equal access, and equal opportunity. Societal impacts. Please see attached letter to the Commission for the Future of Education in Vermont. We can sense these broad threats to the integrity of the broader community outside of the educational sphere. We know that the health of our communities at large is dependent on system-level factors, and while our most immediate concerns lie in the educational sphere, the social and financial impacts of losing our local school would have far-reaching consequences that would end up impacting the entire region. A region struggling with amplified socioeconomic burdens will not support long-term cost efficiencies for the school district. Recommendations. In the pursuit of cost efficiencies for the district, it would be wise to consider changes that do not directly affect students. The risk of decreasing access and quality of student-facing services, in contrast with seeking financial efficiencies that could be gained otherwise, is high. It is exactly these scenarios that hypothetically motivated and continues to drive the forced mergers and restructuring of educational structures across the state. Reduction in services that support educational quality should be considered only as a last resort, but if necessary, should be evaluated fairly, district-wide, not with respect to a particular under-resourced school with limited representation on this board. Belvedere Central School divestment. The Belvedere Central School has been underutilized for years and is now abandoned. The school district has allowed the building integrity to deteriorate, although the central office is in need of a new space. If the building is deemed too remote for use as the central office, given the challenges of travel, distance, retaining employees, and bringing in resources, the very first cost-saving item this board should be discussing is divesting the Belvedere School. The articles of agreement lay out the process, offer the school to the town for $1. The public requests information on how much is spent annually on maintenance, heating, etc. on this abandoned building. Administration. It is our understanding that administrative staff and budgets have increased since the recent merger. We are not aware of any advantages or affordances in the education of students at Waterville Elementary related to improved administration. The public requests a detailed list of managers, assistant managers, and extra administrative staff added to the district since merger, and the job description, purpose, and need for each staff person. Services. The public understands the importance of IT and other services. We also understand that the district has 14 IT staff to serve 8 schools, rather than having one full-time staff person located at each school. The public requests justification for the staffing level, as well as a list of all other staff that are not student-facing, along with the job descriptions, purpose, and need for each staff person. District-wide classroom sizes. Waterville Elementary School has 80 students, 42 from Waterville, 31 from Belvedere, 6 from Johnson, and 1 from Hyde Park. Our average classroom size is 16 students, including preschoolers, and the average is 18 students per classroom for kindergartens through 6th grade. 3 of our 5 classrooms contain 20 or more children, which is the upper limit of recommended classroom size set by the board. Public requests information on classroom sizes for all elementary schools within the district. Programming. The public understands some schools offer non-core programs and courses, such as foreign language instruction, while other schools are not afforded the same offerings. We advocate for equitable distribution of programmatic offerings across schools. This may mean a reduction in offerings in some location, but losing an enrichment program in one locality is a dramatically lesser sacrifice than losing an entire school in another. The public requests a detailed list of all enrichment programming provided by each school and the annual costs associated with said programs. Process. Neutral third-party audit. The public requests a neutral third-party audit to examine potential cost savings without school closures. Said audit should include significant input from local schools and community members to determine where cuts and cost savings can be made without extreme consequence. This will ensure data collection and decisions are conducted in a fair and equitable manner in the absence of conflict of interest and in the presence of objectivity. Due process. Discussions and decisions with profound repercussions cannot and will not be made with limited community input and participation. The public requests due process, transparency, increased access to information, and additional communication. November 11th, 2024 minutes. The public requests that this letter and accompanying materials be attached to the November 11th, 2024 minutes posted on the LNSU website. Equity, equality, and inclusivity. We believe education and access to resources must be equitable and just for all members of our greater community. Belvedere and Waterville have given much and have not asked for much in return. In this funding climate, it is time for all LNMUUSD communities to take stock and make some hard choices for the greater good. This burden will not be borne on our backs alone. Thank you for your time and understanding. We are willing and able to continue this discussion with the board. We ask that requests for information be fulfilled 1 week prior to the next meeting, so we may be of assistance in budget discussions. We are more than happy to work with the central office in order to obtain said information. Thank you once again. We appreciate your service and dedication to Northern Lamoille County. Respectfully, Melissa Manka and Katie Brennan. I do have some prepared remarks. So first of all, thank you to all our community members for showing up tonight. I'd like to make a few remarks concerning what is top of mind for many of you, small school closures. First, I'd like to point out that 2024-2025 board and superintendent goals are posted on the LNSU website. What you won't see in the goals is anything about small school closures. Stated clearly, the board is not considering school closures at this time. It is not an option. There is much rhetoric in the state about school closures. In fact, you will see it called out as one of the levers the state is suggesting as a cost containment measure for taxpayers as part of tonight's legislative update. There is tremendous pressure on the legislature this session to do something about homestead property taxes, which comprises about 25% of the revenue for the state education funds. This board would be remiss if we, as a board, did not consider every budget line and idea that is potentially impactful to taxpayers. Given the state's messaging from the Education Finance Subcommittee around the potential for school closures, the board would not be doing its job if we did not look at every possible budget iteration that might make a difference to you. And without a deep understanding of all of these iterations and impacts, we are left in a spot where we cannot understand and articulate our most compelling argument against school closures. This board is tasked with striking a balance of doing our job to protect the community from higher taxes while respecting the absolute importance of maintaining what is special about our community and schools. So we're choosing to look at other ways to contain costs, and we need your help. The more budgets fail across the state, the more political capital is given to the state to take a more active role in how we run our education systems. Make no mistake, their way will likely mean more closures statewide. The way to maintain local control, to the extent we can, is to come together collaboratively and collectively and work to pass our budgets and maintain our schools. This is our collective responsibility that the board cannot do alone. Memorial North stands for equity, access, and opportunity. Three simple but powerful words in the context of public education. How are we ensuring any of those things? The closure would mean up to 2 hours each way of transportation to and from our school for our youngest students. What would happen to student behaviors and education outcomes for these students? And wouldn't the negative impact on behaviors and outcomes drive up the cost of delivering education elsewhere? If we remove our students from their community, how are we ensuring that the towns of Waterville and Belvedere grow and are places to call home if we are essentially sending our children to grow up in other communities? How do we attract people to our small town to keep them alive and thriving if we are removing fundamental participation from the school, which is the heart of the town and the earliest immersion in what it means to be a citizen of Waterville or Belvedere? Where are those opportunities? Certainly not in Waterville or Belvedere if a closure happens. I know several families that attend Waterville Elementary that would send their children to a private school rather than to be forced to send them elsewhere in the district in the event of a closure. In that scenario, nobody in the district wins, and we actually drive up our per pupil costs across the district. I also think there are ethical concerns around closing our small schools, given our district is a net beneficiary of Act 127. As many of you recall, Act 127 increased the taxing capacity for our district, considering its relative sparsity and poverty levels, amongst other factors. I ask you this: how would it be morally acceptable for certain towns in the district to harvest these benefits, turning their backs on the very students Act 127 was intended to equitably support? That doesn't sound like equity. Closure is not the direction we should or will take, and we need a passed budget now and going forward to help us retain control over decisions. We recognize there are some who believe closure might be the best option for one punch, significant savings, but at what cost in the longer term? We have concrete ideas about how we can reduce costs that will not lead us to a closure. These include managing minimum class sizes, bringing board-certified behavior analysts and therapists in-house, and strategically managing the use of our Hyde Park campus buildings in the summer months amongst other things. At the end of the day, if we decide to close our small schools, how can we continue to stake the claim that we support equity, access, and opportunity for all students in Leavenworth North? Thank you.
It's short, I timed it. My name is Heather Dunn. My husband and I bought the cute little house adjacent to the town green in Waterville 12 years ago. And my daughter Maeve is a 5th grader at Waterville Elementary School. I have a bachelor's degree in biology from Colby College, a master's degree in curriculum and instruction from UVM, and 21 years of teaching experience, with the last 12 years teaching science at Essex Middle School. Because I was a scientist first and an educator second, when members of the Waterville community became worried about the future of our small school, I turned to the research on the topic. Is there data to support smaller schools? Should we close to save money? Here's what the research says. The effects of school size are complex and vary depending on a number of factors, but to briefly summarize 2 recent meta-analyses on the benefits of small schools, one from this year, one from last year, students in small schools feel safer, fight less, come to school more frequently, and report being more attached to their school. Teachers polled report greater job satisfaction, and small schools do a better job with the equity gap, improving student achievement for students in poverty, members of the BIPOC community, and students who access special education. Is there a cost savings in larger schools? Only sometimes. It depends on how resources are allocated. Small schools actually tend to do a much better job being careful with their budgets, whereas wasteful spending is much more prevalent as school size increases. That's what the research says. Here's what my heart says. We live in a tiny town, and the community centers around the school. From trunk or treat to the fall market to concerts at the town hall, we come together for our kids because they are the future of this town. Being part of a small community is something truly special, and it would be a huge loss to this area if you were to consider closing Waterville Elementary School.
Everybody else pretty much feel the same way over there? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, unless you want to get up 2 minutes apiece, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of argument out of this side of the table either, so. Okay. So, me as the board chair, and I think I speak on behalf of everybody else in the room, we love having people come. Love hearing your opinions and your thoughts. Please don't be a stranger. If you think we're joking, we're not. So, I did communicate with a couple of you about my email address and some paperwork I'd be happy to send to you. Please take me up on it. So, that's it. We will.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
We have a message from one of our board members, Stephanie Sweet, who asked me to share with you. She is at Central Vermont Medical Center. She will be fine. She wanted me to share that with you. And she is so sorry she couldn't be here, but she is with you in spirit, and all of you know how much of an advocate she is for the community. So thank you. The last thing I would add is, Bart is right. We get public comments a lot of times when there are problems or perceived problems, or people have concerns about anything and everything. We also want people to be with us and be this community when we have our community events. That is the best way to show the state, to show our legislators that we are one community. And you'll hear more, or you'll have messaging about a December 2nd event. We will have our legislators there. It's really important that people come out for this. So thank you.
Okay. So on to routine business. We have minutes from the LNSU Board Meeting, Curriculum Committee Meeting, Social, Emotional Wellness and Safety Committees. These are all held on October 14th. Minutes of the Finance Capital Meeting on September 30th and October 21st. Do you want a motion to approve those all at the same time?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seen up there or heard? All those in favor of approving these minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed or abstained? Okay. Board orders, that's you.
So I have reviewed the board orders that are accompanying your agenda. As usual, they look to be in great order, and I recommend that the board approve said board orders.
Motion approved. Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the board orders, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Okay. You're up again.
All right. Getting lots of time. There we are. Rainey, are you able to share one thing? Appreciate that. So let me just, as that's pulling up on the screen, I want to say that there has been a lot going on with respect to the work that was started and actually legislated as part of Act 183. That is the yield bill, AKA the property tax bill. As a reminder, that requires the commission of the future of public education to prepare and submit a written report containing its preliminary findings and recommendations, including short-term cost containment considerations on or before December 15th of this year. So there's a short-term report coming out in the next, a little over a month from now. And there's also, the commission will continue for roughly the next year, and then it is essentially going to issue its final report and dissolve at the end of next year. A number of committees have been really, of the commission have been really active. So what I've tried to do here, you should all have a copy of this in your email. It does contain live links to some of the reports that are referenced herein. But what I want to start with is the brainstorm chart. I'm going to jump around a little bit in the deck, so please excuse my stream of consciousness. But there's a brainstorm chart that are slides 11 and 12 that contain ideas from the most recent Education Finance Subcommittee. So it's this one. You can't really see it, but I'll read some of those. I'll read some of those ideas. We talked a little bit about a brainstorming session that in our last meeting. Let me just zoom in on my own screen here. So some of the ideas that I would not be surprised make its way into the December 15th report. In terms of cost containment, require school districts to designate up to 3 public schools if they close a school to limit expansion of tuition vouchers. Another idea is limit tuition payments to average announced tuition, including for public schools, including guarantee that taxpayers don't pay more than private pay. There's tuition costs to approved providers, excluding pre-K, recommendations around school size, establishing optimal school sizes, which we are taking a very hard look at. The state mentions explicitly merging small schools and districts. That is getting some talk statewide. And then they talked about addressing staff to student ratios and class size minimums in the education quality standards to help districts come into alignment and to reduce costs. We'll talk more about that as well. On the healthcare side, reference-based healthcare with respect to Medicare reference payments. Return healthcare to local districts to bargain. So that's actually doing a full 180 from where we are presently, where benefits are negotiated and bargained at a statewide level. And then also revise statewide bargaining. In terms of special education, mandate cost limits for therapeutic schools in Vermont, implement upstream special ed services, additional administrative support standards from AOE to reduce district level administration costs and needs, strengthen designated agencies' ability to collaborate with schools, restrict school hiring, mental health professionals, draw down more Medicaid dollars. They've listed BOCES, which I don't, which is interesting, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, that is something that New York State does, and it basically centralizes certain functions at a statewide level so that the state bears those costs on behalf of all districts. And then lastly, school construction aid. So this is really to address the cost side of the equation. The next slide addresses some of the revenue concerns. So one of the ideas there, not rocket science, add more revenue. Transfer revenue. Diversify revenue sources for the Ed Fund to ensure alignment with national average of state support for school budgets. So that what's not mentioned explicitly there is the state actually is well below national standards in terms of public tax dollars support for state education. Tax millionaires, expand sales tax and services. I'm not going to drain all of these, but there is some revenue considerations that the state is considering as well. Probably some really good ones, like there are instances where the non-homestead rate is actually less than the homestead rate in certain communities. So there it probably makes sense to at least have the floor be the homestead rate in those communities. So there's a lot that the state is looking at, which includes also just adjusting the funding formula. So a lot more to come here. They are going to be filling out this rubric, and we will continue to keep you posted as there are developments here. This is happening real time. Wanted to give the board an update.
Can you go back to the study that they did?
Oh yeah, you were talking about the
Pincus, whatever.
PICUS report. Yeah, so we'll jump to that next.
Okay.
Um,
Now, one thing I want to interject before Bart starts on that. This is the report that I've offered to a few of the folks in Waterville. I downloaded on my desktop. I would really ask, it's 104 pages in total. There's 33 pages of footnotes and bibliographies and all that stuff. We need to know this stuff. So as a homework assignment, please it took me about an hour or so to read it. You'll note to me the most comical part of it was the last two paragraphs on page 104, where that study doesn't really take a look at small schools very well.
Yeah.
Because that's not what study's all about. So I would ask that all the board members be somewhat familiar with that document. That's what's driving all these changes. Part of it.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely driving it. And I think most, if not all of you, got a letter from Governor Scott on October 31st that actually referenced that PICUS report. So it's going to get more airtime, and it's important for us to understand the contents as well as some of the limitations. So the punchline is that in their evidence-based model of adequate spending, the adequate level of education spending is roughly $400 million to $463 million below where we're currently at. That's a huge number. Now, I will say, and which is why I put this disclaimer here and kind of building on Mark's comment, I'll note that the models, this was written in the report, the model school and district sizes do not necessarily align with Vermont's current educational landscape. And it also goes on to state, these sizes are larger than some, if not all, of Vermont's schools and districts. Vermont's current policy decisions to maintain smaller school and districts likely result in higher costs that are not fully addressed in this analysis. So not completely unsurprising, like we want to maintain schools, and I will add the prototypical school that was used in this report is 450 students at the elementary school level, 450 students at the middle level, and 600 students at the high school level, which is higher than most states in Vermont at each level. So I guess take this with a grain of salt, but it is going to get a ton of airtime. People are going to reference it because of the headline number, right? The 400 million in annual savings that could potentially be achieved. If you go to we'll go to page 4. The report is not all bad though, and I think we are considering. Sorry, page 3. It does have a lot of recommendations around the size of our classes. So for instance, full day preschool classrooms are staffed the size of 1 teacher and 1 aide for every 15 students. At the elementary school level, it's 25 average K through 5, or 25 for 4 through 6, and 15 for K through 3. Secondary core teachers and class sizes, 6 through 12, it's 25 with an average class size of 25. I'm not going to drain this completely, but some of this is in line with what we are looking at for minimum class sizes. And so we are going to completely disregard this report. I guess any questions on PICUS, any color commentary you want to add now, Kat?
So I would say that the one piece that we were able to take from the PICUS report is in line with what we're taking from the Education Quality Standards, which will be live July 1, 2025, and that is the class size policy. This board adopted a policy in 2024 in March. We now have, after working with administration, procedures that does not need to be approved by the board, but is something that the board should be familiar with. Lots of considerations here. So for example, it's important to say that this class size procedures and class sizes are not necessarily applicable to physical education, to labs, to multilingual learners, to students with disabilities who may need a smaller environment, to our GMTCC and every other CTE that have maximum numbers of students that are allowed in their programs for safety reasons. But there are course-specific considerations. Multi-grade classrooms are to be treated the same as single-grade classrooms. I covered special education, English language. So the recommendation is kindergarten, minimum of 15, maximum of 18. First grade, minimum 15, maximum 20. Recommended guidelines. These are not mandatory guidelines, they are recommended. Second and third, 15 minimum, 20 maximum. 4 through 6, 15 minimum, 22 maximum. 7th and 8th, 15 to 25. And grades 9 through 12, the recommended guideline for the class size for most courses is 15 to 20 students. And the recommended guideline for minimum class size for most courses is 12 and maximum is 25. There are procedures set forth for exceptions. There's a review process. We're not reviewing schools that have such few numbers that we can't meet the maximum. That's not part of what this is gonna look like. Students could be reassigned to another section of the same course within the school to meet minimum class size standards. That typically would be at the secondary level. And decisions to proceed with classes below the minimum size should be approved by the board, superintendent, principal, ensuring that such decisions align with the district's educational goals and financial constraints. This is not, these numbers are not out of line with what we are seeing set forth with other reports. So that is what we're looking at for class size procedures. And so we have some work to do at some of our schools, and that is the work that is happening right now to right size classes.
I'll try to keep the rest brief here as we've got a fair amount of other stuff on the agenda, but Randy, can you move to slide 5. So there are a number of, these next few slides are a consultant report. So the Agency of Education has hired a couple consultants to help them look at statewide education costs and trends and how we might implement some of those recommendations going forward. These slides are largely regurgitated from a side deck that was actually published in August by the Agency of Education, so it's not entirely different. But I will point out, again, statewide enrollment trends are contributing to the cost pressures that we are seeing. You can see that K-12 public schools enrollment is declining at a faster rate than total enrollment in public schools. And at the same time, you can see that the independent schools is actually ticking up over the past 8 years or so. So some interesting pressures there. We'll cover tuition in a moment. But moving on to the next slide. I think it's important for us to take note of some of these ratios and as we benchmark against our peers as part of the budget process. So we are in group 3. That's 1,400 to 1,999 students. There's 15 SUs and teachers per 100 students is 10.8. The leaders per 100 students is 1.4. Student services per 100 students 2.5, and student services per 100 students 5.5. What you'll see is that the ratios are actually higher for that smallest enrollment group. Those are some of our smallest districts across the state. And you'll see that in 2 slides as we look at the statewide education cost per pupil. But before we go into that, I want to talk a little bit about slide 7. This is education fund appropriations. So this is an outlook of education fund appropriations. Projected increase was 8.1% for fiscal year 2025. This is as of the end of July. And as I look at some of the recommendations that are being bantered about in the brainstorming sessions, there's a lot of items that people view that are non-educational in the education fund. For instance, you got a $20 million price tag for universal school meals. We've got pension and OPEB costs of over $55 million. We've got instances where there are mental health expenses covered by the education fund. So that is something that the state that I fully expect is going to be embodied in some of the recommendations from the commission. And I just want to make you all aware of those items that are in the education fund. And it's perhaps unsurprising, 8% growth, right? Moving on. This is a look at total expenditures per ADM by each of those 4 SU school district size groups. Again, we are in group 3. This is FY23. So FY23 expenditures per ADM was $26,827. What I will mention is there has been a request for additional information from the Agency of Education to slice and dice this in a few different ways, because what this includes is a lot of temporary, pandemic type of spending, like the ESSER spending. So it's perhaps not a representative look at what the costs would be at, as we emerge from some of that. Next slide. Couple comments here. This is a slide that details all statewide expenditures by object code. So what you will see is that salaries are almost a half of all of our education spending. And what's interesting is that salaries are actually increasing at a lower level than all other expenditure types. Those first three really make up a big chunk of our ed spending, and perhaps unsurprising, it's salaries, other purchase services, and employee benefits. With just a couple comments on the largest component of purchase services, which is about $450 million in FY23, is actually tuitioning. And about half of that category, 46%, goes to private schools. So what may surprise people is there are actually a lot of tuition dollars in our public education fund that goes to independent schools, other private schools, schools out of state, in some cases, schools out of country. Is a bit mind-boggling. But expect to see more relating to the recommendations there. With respect to employee benefits, that represents about 18% of total statewide expenditures. Health insurance accounts for about 60% of that, which equated to $246 million in FY23. So another good chunk. And then lastly, I just want to go to the next slide, dive into a little bit on the salaries component. I know we're getting a little bit long-winded here, but I think it's important as we think about statewide, what does the landscape look like relative to our Lemoyle North budget? What you'll see here, again, there's some modest growth in salaries, but it's not as much as the other categories. And what you'll see is that the composition of those salaries is pretty consistent year over year as it relates to teachers, which makes up about 62%. Paraeducators are about 10%. That's higher than a lot of other states, but what you'll note, a lot of our statewide spending is going to people who are providing instruction. That's kind of my takeaway, and we're not seeing these really broad swings in administration, right? For instance, we're relatively consistent in terms of the buckets of where we're spending our money at the state level. So I know this has been really long-winded, but I think it's important to keep you all up to speed as to what's going on at the state level. And invite any questions or further discussion.
Crickets.
Okay. On we will go. Thank you, Bart. Policy review.
So, as you are aware, the board decided to, as one of its goals, review all of our policies this year. And so that's why we have a stream of them on this agenda. 3 of them are second readings, and I'll just remind the board what the changes are, if any. Under volunteers and work study students, the only change to the update is this statement. Only volunteers and work study students who have been screened and approved by the superintendent have unsupervised contact with students. The screening process utilized by the school district shall minimally include a name and birth date check with the Vermont Internet Sex Offender Registry. That is just a one-line change from the previous one. The second one is transportation. And there is a change to the new policy, and for those who who don't know this, the VSBA puts out model policies and we adopt them. They have all been legally vetted, and if we are choosing to do something that the VSBA is not recommending, we would be encouraged to seek our own counsel to make sure that we're not missing anything, because as we know, the change of a word can make a huge difference. So for transportation, the one addition is that it says it may furnish total or partial transportation on public roads to students. The reason for that is we have a number of districts, given the bus shortage and just in different ways that our crews and bus companies look at routes, it may make sense to have a central location somewhere in a town. Let's take Cambridge, for example. There is a central hub where buses may pick up students who have already been delivered to that hub and then bring them to school. That would be considered partial transportation. So that is the one change for that. And participation of home study students, the policy didn't change. There is a procedure that is now attached to that. And it's fairly simple. It says resident home study students shall be eligible to participate in the following district academic and other activities. Academic, co-curricular, athletic, and extracurricular. Academic courses, as long as they don't constitute more than 40% of the home study students' core curriculum. And core curriculum includes basic communication skills, reading and writing, use of numbers, math, history, citizenship, government, natural sciences, English and American and other literature, early college, dual enrollment, and flexible pathways curriculum. So these are second readings, and I would ask if there is a motion to adopt these.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just have a question on the drugs and alcohol policy. There were a couple of, oh, okay, oh, sorry, my bad. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
That's okay.
yeah.
I do have a question on one of the other.
Sure.
Forgive me, because it's been an awful long time since I've read that. The background checks for the volunteers and mentors, does that include the Vermont Child Abuse and Neglect Registry?
Oh, yes.
Oftentimes, we don't say that explicitly, and it's implied, but I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that that exists. And that is something that we can access for free, so.
Yes, and as you know, policies are meant to be broad. How we implement them are very specific. So yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Anything else? Hearing nothing on the screen. All those in favor of approving these three, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Okay, we have these three policies approved.
And the second three are, the first two are identical to what we have, so they are essentially reviews. We are not gonna adopt them tonight because the warning actually needs to exist for at least 10 days. So we will put this on, for the next board meeting, but they are identical. Student records and alcohol and drug-free workplace. Please read these at your bed, at your leisure. And we will entertain questions at the next board meeting. Again, no changes at all. Substitute teachers, this is a first reading. There are a few changes, but they don't, well, the previous policy says substitute teachers will be paid per diem wages. The new policy, as vetted by the VSBA, just says substitute teachers will be paid wages. So simple changes, but ones that the board needs to be aware of. So please read these and we will discuss them at the next meeting.
Come up. So back on the table with central office discussion. So it's been about 7 years we've been talking about this, I think, at this point. And I think we have a plan that is attainable for that building at this point. This summer, there was a new piece of equipment that came out. It was called a light breath ERV system, which is a small commercial grade air handling unit that is very cost effective. We had never used one before. It doesn't hook into our building management system. It's pretty low tech. We installed 2 down at central office with the remainder of the ESSER funds, so it didn't come out of our general funds. And they're working as designed. Our indoor air quality test that we just completed about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, came back our carbon dioxide issue, which was the biggest issue, the occupation of that space, basically are all normal. So it's where they need to be. It seems to be maintaining well. So now it's trying to figure out how to use the rest of that space and bring it up to code so that we can basically make it our long-term home. And so this plan in the memo is a 10 to 20-year plan to occupy that space. It does include a net gain of 3 office spaces. That's pre-COVID 3. So we would be absolutely maximizing out that space. There's a whole list. I can read down through it if you guys want, but it's basically we're replacing all the ceilings. Right now they are all deteriorating and actually falling apart. If you go down there, there's a lot of holes and falling through dust and insulation.
Can I just interject something?
Please.
So does the board know that we pay rent for the people that have to be outsourced because we can't house them in central office?
I believe that was part of the discussion because we do, not tonight, we can re-talk about it if you guys want.
So I say that because when you talk about adding an office, the question I would have if I didn't know that was, why are you adding an office? It's to bring back the people who are central office employees.
Yes. So again, I'm kind of kicking off from the discussion of building the building up on Cricket Hill. And what started that conversation was at that time, they didn't have an air handling unit that wasn't full commercial, that wasn't 6 figures for that space. It was also the need for space because 30% of central office is dispersed amongst the district to try to pull everybody into the same building. So this is basically still pulling a few of those essential staff members so that everybody's housed on one campus rather than out around. We pay rent to this facility because basically any CTE space has to be used for CTE. That's Texas. So basically it's saving money by not paying rent and pulling these people back to the central office so that everybody's housed in the same building. But anyways, it's the electrical changes that are needed to bring the building up to code. There's some casework and some remodel of the break room, but that's actually because we're going to cut the break room in more like 40-60, and the 60% is going to become a new dual office. So there isn't really a break room. There's a little tiny countertop and a fridge at the end. Heating system flush. A lot of these items that are on this list are actually deferred maintenance because we've put almost $0 into that building since we talked about the Cricket Hill project. Basically, we didn't want to spend money on a building we were talking about bulldozing, so we've deferred everything since COVID 2020. Anyways, you can read down through the list. There's IT infrastructure updates. That's actually your cabling, which we have some like Cat 3 cabling in there, which is phone wire. So this is actually bringing it up to Cat 6, so we can use it. Anyways, there we go. It's the total estimated cost is about $350,000 for all the work. Funding that would be using the funds that we had set aside originally for the Cricket Hill project. So there was $114,000 that was slated for upfit and moving central office when we built the building. And then the remainder of the funds were the design funds that we set aside for projects. So these are not general funds again. These were funds set aside for that Cricket Hill project, which is now tabled.
And so we do pay this supervisory union or the central office pays rent also for the building to the secondary campus because it belongs to the secondary campus. When we get into the budget, you'll see I built in an estimated additional amount to sort of pay back. So the 114 sits at the SU. It's money the SU set aside for moving costs and to help as much as they could with the project. And then I built into the budget an amount of increased rent to this campus to over time, over 10 years, to sort of help the campus recoup the funds and the investment in basically putting in a ceiling that's not falling down, carpeting that's 30 years old, getting that out, getting rid of the rust and the
Radiators, all the radiation heat, and
Yeah.
much of it's failed. Some of it's bringing our building up to safety code, like actually putting shades on the first floor. All of our schools that we have safety protocols and procedures that we use. Central office, we have never included in that, so this is kind of bringing up them to the basic standard that all of our schools have. and so basically.
The animals out of the walls and out of the ceilings.
That was actually probably, everybody noticed, we did cut about a quarter of an acre of trees all around the building. I don't know if anybody noticed that on there. The idea was basically to open the site up, get some sun in there and hopefully dry it out, create a little better work area.
Right, and we can deal with the vermin and maybe the crumbling walls, but it's not up to code. We don't have any sort of carbon dioxide. We just don't have what we need. And we are
And
not thinking of remodeling, we're not doing anything other than trying to bring the building up to code.
And bring the people
And
back.
it's been an 8-year discussion.
This is, just a caveat there, this would bring the building to fully code compliance besides ADA. Because of the site, and that was one of the reasons why we looked at a new building, the grades don't work and we can't get an elevator in there, and that's a ton of money. Elevator, $350,000 the cost of an elevator in there. So we would check basically every box except for the ADA box. For what we would need to do is we would just have accommodations. If we had a need, we would have to find an office in one of our buildings that is compliant, and we would take that. So we have a plan B for if that were to happen. It just couldn't be at central office, and the cost to try to make it ADA compliant.
Having those additional spaces downstairs.
Yes.
To accommodate.
So what we're looking for tonight, if possible, is the administration would like the board to approve us moving forward using those funds for all of the projects that are below bid requirements. And then in December, I'm hoping to have any of the projects that are above bid requirements back on the table and on the agenda so that we can discuss for winter construction this week. Thinking the tight timeline is 6 weeks. It's probably more like 8 weeks. We would unoccupy the building, move everybody out, try to get the work done as quickly as possible so get everybody back in there for end of the year.
And just a reminder that this campus, the tech center, has gone up 30 students this year. It's a phenomenal growth. So the space that's being used right now temporarily for central offices really needs to be vacated and given back to the tech center to use for instructional purposes. So we're gonna have to find another space, either our space or rent from someone else.
Motion to approve this. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of approving this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Okay.
Okay.
You do it, budget.
Yep, I'm just doing a high-level budget review. The FCC got us all together early, so we are still about a week early in the process. We don't have any numbers down from the state, as far as I know, we don't have any numbers. So just for the supervisory union, the total change in assessment is down 0.6%, so basically level funded. That's general ed expenses down 1.8%. Special education expenses down 0.82%. Jen has done a phenomenal amount of work to bring a lot of the services that we've been contracting out in-house, which improves the delivery of services overall, and it also is less expensive to do it in-house than to contract out. That's helping with the savings, but again, both general ed and special ed expenditures are down. Revenues are up about 2% at the supervisory union. The modified unified elementary schools still have a bunch of work that they're going through. Primarily, you've heard about the class size realignment. They've been working on that. General ed expenses are up about 8%. The work we're doing should help with that. Special ed is down 4.6%. Revenues are down 1.3%. And that's assuming use of the same amount of surplus that was applied for the current year, for a net change to ed spending, an increase of 6.73%. This is the area where our teams are focusing the most. Again, working on the class size alignment according to what Kat was just talking about. The middle school and high schools, general ed expenses are up 0.97, about 1%, basically level funded. Special ed expenses, because of the increased number of students, is actually up almost 5%. That's the assessment, even though the assessment is down overall, it's distributed based on number of students, so the high school, middle school weight of students now is carrying more of that. Revenues are up almost 22%. There is additional categorical aid from the state. We're expecting we're expecting good interest, not as good as what we got last year, but we're still expecting good interest going into '26. Medicaid billing improvements are showing great results, and prior year surplus apply for a net change to ed spending of 0.9%, almost level funded. GMTCC, general ed expenses up 4.6. In all of these categories, it's salaries and benefits first and foremost pushing those changes. Revenues up about 10.7% because of prior year surpluses that the tech center can apply. For an expected net change in tuition and state aid, which we still don't have the number for the state aid, up about 4.2%. And looking forward to a December 2 community dinner and discussion where we can get the community here to talk about their investment priorities, what they'd like to see, the investment priorities that the board has been working on and focusing on. And we're making great progress. I think this is really positive news in light of everything. We've got small increases, and the elementary school, the work that's been done so far is showing that there's great improvement there. I have good faith that we'll meet the same small increases. Are there any?
Just make a quick comment and thanking the entire finance team and administration for taking such a hard look. I mean, we are in an amazing spot for November 11th, right? And the fact that we're only talking about a 1% increase at the high school, middle high school level, and a modest 6% increase at this point in time at the elementary school level is appreciated.
And I think we can find those funds.
Yes. So I think just a comment, I appreciate all the work that's gone in thus far, and tremendous spot in work. November 11th.
I appreciate the work from the board too. A lot of work on everybody's part.
And keep in mind on the elementary side of the house, we got crushed last year, budget time. So 6% is kind of getting a piece of that back to help us out. So just keep that in mind. We all did a lot of work last year, and we're trying to rebound, some pieces of that to get us back where we should be. So.
Okay, so I'm going to start with something different because it is in line with what Deb was talking about. So we are looking to change, and the board will vote on this, our December 9th meeting to December 2nd, because we want to have the community have more time to give us their priorities, their thoughts. And December 2nd seems like a good night to do that. We're also going to be asking students what their investment priorities are. I think student voice is something that we value but don't always take advantage of, and they really are instrumental in helping us shape our priorities. So I'll go back to the community night. So we are looking to have dinner, and Rainey will talk a little bit more about that when it gets after I'm finished speaking. But we're looking forward to doing that if the board agrees to switch that date to the 2nd. Couple of things. We had our Safe Schools Night, and I need to go back a little bit. to talk about the genesis of why we decided safety was the key. 5 years ago, our community members and students felt that they were not safe in our schools. So we started our work with the Restorative Center. We started looking at school resource officers who were partners for us and members of our community. And in this case, one of them is a coach, has 3 students in elementary, middle, and high, and knows everyone. He's a wonderful person. The other one is a resident of Waterville. That's where he wants to live for the rest of his life. He does, sugaring, and he does this because he loves the kids and he knows all the families. So we sent a community survey out a while back, and one of the things that shows us that we've done some really good work is the question, how would you rate the safety of our schools? 93% rated our schools safe. So that is, you juxtapose that with, I don't feel safe at all, to this, that is huge. And that is based on the fact that we are espousing safety and belonging for our students as a fundamental framework from which we do everything. So, the other thing I would say, and I want to thank Rainey for all of his work. This was a lot of work. We had a ton of community partners there. We had Lamoille County Mental Health. We had Copley. We had Vermont Department of Health. We had Vermont State Police. We had, help me, United Way. Yes, the emergency services. Cambridge, the emergency services came out. We had a ton of people. And that is a reflection of our partnership and the fact that we do everything that we do in conjunction, in collaboration with our partners. And that makes our district pretty unique. So we had hoped for more of a turnout, but I will say we had definitely a quorum of the board there, which was great. And our administrators were there and we had families there. It was a cold evening and some followed up afterwards to say it was too cold for me to come out with my young child, and I get that. So, but it was a huge success. We talked about a Juul settlement, and I misspoke when I said that it was a check of 7,000 something last year and 7,000 something this year. It actually was a total over slightly more than 2 years, $23,225 that came to this district to be used for substance use education. So more to come on how that is used by the high school, middle school, and elementary schools. We have sent out a climate survey to all teachers and staff in all schools. Those surveys will be returned will immediately go to our HR coordinator. So once those are compiled and people have 2 weeks or so to complete those, then we will have a report out and use survey results for reflection purposes in our schools. And there is a central office survey that is going to be disseminated at the end of this week to central office employees. So what we're trying to do is meet the needs of everyone, our communities by the surveys, our teachers and staff by the surveys, our administration by surveys, our central office counterparts by the surveys. And, we had 300 responses from the surveys. That is not statistically significant. However, that is a huge jump from the 50 at most we have received in the past. So the trajectory is a good one. We want information, we're asking for it. Okay, that is it for me. Rainey, you want to talk about December 2nd? Because we need to start really rolling this out.
First off, also want to say thank you to everyone who came out for our safety night. It was a lot of fun. We had a great presentation. It was a very nice first opportunity to talk a little bit more publicly about the work that has gone into to create the atmosphere we are aiming for. GMA TV was there, recorded the presentation. We've got that recording now, so we plan to post that and share that around and just continue to spread awareness. As Kat mentioned, though, looking ahead, December 2nd, we are planning our first preliminary community budget discussion. Again, a first great early opportunity for community members to come out to get a early preliminary look. Again, no finalized numbers by this point, but to get a sense of where we are currently at. And it's also, again, a great opportunity for us to hear about what's important to them. What do we need to make sure we prioritize moving forward? So December 2nd, 6 p.m. right here in the Community Education Center on the Lamoille Union campus. We hope everyone joins us. There are some flyers on the back in front of the door. Please grab some. Everyone, share them, spread the good word. Hoping for a great turnout. So word is out.
And last thing.
I was just gonna say, we're gonna continue to promote that night, so you're about to start to see it everywhere.
Okay, I just wanted to say, Charlie, you started this conversation, but I had an opportunity to see the play multiple times this weekend. And I will tell you, the confidence these students have on stage is like nothing I have seen. They are talented, they are comfortable, they are so comfortable in their own skins. And it was a treasure to see. I mean, they were outstanding. And I would add one last thing. I've had an opportunity to work with multiple students in the high school and actually a couple in the elementary schools, sort of one-on-one. And that is just, I'm allowed to do that because the principals allow me to come in and do that work with the students. There is nothing like that. I'm working with a couple of students on academic recovery, and I am learning so much from them. So this would never happen in a big city of San Francisco, California, or New York, New York. This happens here, and that's what makes this district special. So thank you, principals, for allowing me to force my way in. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? What time will the board meeting be that night? Before or after?
So that is going to be up to the board. Did you have a thought about that? I think it will probably be short board meeting, dinner, community discussion. So whatever
That would make sense.
the will of the board.
Everybody okay with that? If there's no no's, that's what we're gonna go with.
So far.
Okay. Takes care of that.
So we're looking at 5 o'clock, 5:30?
Man, there, yeah, we'll send it out in an agenda now. It won't be one of those power-packed agendas like it is tonight. It'll be get the business done and get on to the real stuff with everybody else, with the community and all. Okay. Start out with David if you'd like.
Sure, thank you. I have a few updates to give. It's a couple of weeks ago now, but it's been since the last time I gave a report. We sent the entire school on a field trip to a place in Stowe called The Current, which I believe used to be the Helen Day Art Center. And all of our students got a chance to see an art exhibit by an artist named Shakaya Booker, who uses recycled tires to make like the most impressive stuff I've ever seen. And I was really excited. I was a little nervous, as we talked about in our meetings. Our students are not always having the highest level decorum, but they did great on the field trip. I was super pumped about it. And it was a great moment for our school to see that our kids can go and have a wonderful experience like that all in a facility. We have had a couple of events that have been really fun at our school. We did our 21st annual mask parade, where students make masks in art class. This is on Halloween. In lieu of kids wearing costumes at school, we do, our kids in the art classes make costumes, make masks. So we did our 21st annual one. That's not quite as fun without the grocery store. That's the end point of our turnaround point, and then the employees would come out and give our kids candy, but they weren't there anymore. But still a very fun event, and it's cool to see the tradition continuing. We also we've been doing for the last 2 years community meetings where all the students are in the gym, and I told you about before that we started something called our JAG groups, where we have these multi-age groups of kids who meet twice a month, and they are working on building a little community inside a larger school community. And so they're starting out our last community meeting last Wednesday. They're running the community meeting. So instead of me running it, which I've been doing for the last 2 years. Last week we had a group of kids running it, multi-age group of kids, and that was pretty cool. Although the older kids did most of the talking, but hopefully over time, you'll see all the different kids in the groups participating and running those meetings. And there's a structured agenda that they run through, pretty cool. And then lastly, we have done some climate surveys of our students, and I'm pretty excited about some of the results. This is all in a report. These details are in the report to the board that I sent to Michelle a few weeks ago, but maybe not a few weeks, last week. But we only asked 4 questions of students. And we asked questions like, is there at least one adult in the school that you feel safe talking to? We gave this to kids back in February of last school year, and 88% of the kids said yes, and we just did it again, and 93.5% of the kids said yes. That's a nice little improvement, and it's obviously, we want that to be 100%. We want every kid to feel connected to an adult, but 93.5% is pretty close, and so we have a couple of kids to just try and support. The same thing with, I have friends at school. We did it last year, we had 95%, now it's 97.5%. Again, it's a small increase, but we were already really high. I feel safe at school. Last year was 87%, this year is 94.5%. So we're very excited about some of these growths. The numbers were already good last year, but they're all getting a little bit better with some of the efforts that we've been making to try and help our school have a better overall climate in the building. So I'm excited about that. We will be asking these questions again in May of students, and we'll be able to compare our results again. And these are, we have a little committee that is taking the results, because obviously we want all these to be 100%. So none of them are 100%, but they're all getting close. But so we will be taking, we have a committee that took those results and is figuring out an action plan. For example, we've created it's an old program we used to do, but we've reinstituted a program of silent mentoring where we're asking adults to sign up to kind of become a kid's buddy without the kid knowing that you've signed up to be their buddy. But there's a requirement of having like 3 intentional conversations with the child each week, so that the child knows that there's someone that's asking about them and checking in and seeing how they're doing. So that's all an attempt to have more kids feeling connected to adults than currently have. That's how things are going down.
Good evening. Our student council, which is a group of 5th and 6th graders elected by their peers, organized our inaugural Spirit Week in Eden. We had different themed days, Pajama Day, Sports Day, Twin Day, School Spirit Day, which fell on Halloween, so we did a similar. People wore blue and white, and Flannel Friday. We also had a community meeting during that week. We have students lead our community meetings. This time the 6th grade hosted it, and kindergarten, 2nd, and 4th graders shared. We alternate even months and odd months. So November, 3rd grade will host, and 1 and 5 will share. The student council also had a food drive, and 500 plus items were gathered to take to the Johnson food shelf. Also, our student council members raise and lower the flag each day in front of the school, fold it, so they've learned how to fold the flag properly, and lead our school in the Pledge of Allegiance each day. And thank you to our veterans that are here. Thank you for your service. I was talking to my spouse, who's a veteran, about that practice and instilling that thought and honor to the flag and those traditions. We also had the snowplow that we named visit on Thursday. The name that was chosen is Snow Much Fun, with an exclamation point. So that was great. The plow driver explained the work that's done, how much the truck weighs and everything. We also won the naming of the new long wing plow, which is Shirami Timbers. So I don't know if that plow is going to come visit, but that was kind of exciting too. We had parent-teacher conferences last week, and We had 80% participation in each of the classes, which is really great because having those conversations is a really great connection and building teams with our parents and our teachers and our students. Next week, we're having our MTSS meetings with teachers, special educators, and interventionists to talk about student progress and goals.
And MTSS stands for?
Multi-tiered system of support.
Thank you.
Good evening. We've been having a lot of activity going on at Waterville as well. A few weeks ago, we wanted to really delve more into fire safety, and we have a few parents that actually volunteer for the Cambridge Fire Department. And so they came and they brought a truck and they talked to all the students in the school about fire safety and showed a video, and the children were able to go outside and see the truck and ask questions. And we haven't had that out at our school in a little bit, so that was a nice opportunity for the students to see that. A big thank you to our volunteer firefighters for doing that and taking the time to do that. On Friday, we had a member of the Abenaki come and speak with us all day. She was there all day. She worked with every classroom. Children learned a little bit about traditions and were able to hear some chanting, and they performed some songs and learned some songs. And then we had like a little mini assembly at the end of the day where students were able to listen to each other's songs that they learned. And that was, the kids really enjoyed that. That was really powerful. Also on Friday, to learn about Veterans Day, one of our teachers, partners who is a veteran, came in and spoke with her class about what that meant. And that was a good opportunity. And we thank them all for their service, of course, too, and just bringing that awareness to our students that may not know. We have parent conferences coming up next week, and we usually have really great turnouts. I'm looking forward to that as well. And then we're going to have our Thanksgiving meal, I think, on the 20th or the 21st at our school, and I'm very grateful that the food service is willing to continue doing that for us, and families come, you'll hear all about it, and we're excited to have people come on into the school, and I think that's it right now.
All right, my turn. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Beth Ann Peary. I'm the principal at the high school. I will try to keep it short, but there are so many amazing things happening. Progress reports are in the mail. Some families are getting them, others wait a little longer like me, but they will be in everyone's mailboxes. Our fall sports are wrapping up. And we had a wonderful, just all around fall season. Our football team went undefeated in the regular season. They had a tough loss, I think it was semifinals. We had some outstanding cross-country results. We had 2 runners finish in the top 10 and go on to New England's, and that was awesome. And then just recently we talked about our SROs and their engagement, and they have done these amazing just for fun games to celebrate the end of baseball season and now the end of soccer. And we hosted law enforcement officers. We had game wardens, we had state police. I'm not sure if Morristown was here, the sheriff's department. My own sister came and played for Stowe Police Department, and our high schoolers beat them. It was 3-1. It was awesome. It was windy, it was cold, it was rainy. Rainy was there, but it was so much fun. Let's see. Talk about the theater. I think I laughed so much I cried at Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and David Manning's son, someone spoke about the amazing performance from Willy Wonka, and David's son, it was outstanding. All of our students, like Sophie Hunsberger, her voice, I could not believe it. And Kat talked about our students feeling confident and comfortable, and I would say that's probably biggest change I've noticed since this is my 5th year at Lamoille, and there is something for every single kid in our school. And I'm starting to see all those groupings just cross with each other and celebrate each other. And it's pretty amazing. So fall sports, theater was amazing. We've got NHS induction ceremony coming right up. We're doing something new. The school counselors and I have some scheduled meetings for any students that are interested in dual enrollment, so taking college courses, and we're hosting like little workshops for them to answer questions and help them through the process of signing up. We are also doing some new class meetings so that we can really highlight, like we want our 9th and 10th graders to know what their options are later on so that they can really make the choices they need to as 9th and 10th graders. And keep their doors open for them. And if you haven't checked out Lancer TV, do it. Rainey keeps the website live with our links, and really I could just stop talking and you can watch the videos that the students share because they are doing a great job. I think they have some academic sections coming up where they're gonna showcase some of our like AP course offerings. So there's a lot going on, but things are good.
All right, to stand up so I can see everybody and talk to you. I'm Diane Riley, principal at Hyde Park Elementary School. And boy, it's hard being the last elementary teacher, principal going through because a lot of things that are happening there are happening at our school and I celebrate them all. It's pretty exciting, the opportunities our kids have. I'm gonna focus a little bit on some things our kids participated in that was cross grade level. We got to attend the Willy Wonka show with my 5th and 6th graders. That was about almost 60, 54, 60 5th and 6th graders, and they were enthralled. It was 2 hours, right? And they sat there, and then they had an intermission. They sat there and they didn't get lunch till almost 1 o'clock, and it was fabulous. It was so inspiring to see former students and students I knew. That was great. The other thing is Up for Learning is, you've seen some of the kids here for Up for Learning. They've started an elementary Up for Learning, which is, it's called P2C2, and I had to keep writing it down. It's Personal Power and Community Connections. And they took a small group of students and an advisor from each school, and they came over here and they interacted for half a day with the high school and middle school kids. I'm thrilled with the cross grade level and our connections that our kids are starting to get more with the middle school. At Hyde Park Elementary, some of you are sick of me hearing this, but our house system, one of our goals this year is community and family involvement. And what we're trying to do is leverage everything that we're doing with our kids to involve families. David, that's very brave, taking the whole school. I did it this year for the first time, and it was like, that's, for us, it's a lot of kids and a lot of buses, and we took pre-K, and we took our whole school to Bert's Apple Orchard with we called it phase 1, and we ended up with 120 parents and family members coming, which was almost half the population of our kids. So we're trying to leverage getting our families and our community involved because they're our taxpayers. They're the people that are going to spread the news and share information. We picked apples. We also picked pumpkins. And I told my curriculum team about this. We actually made the Channel 5 news. I don't know if anybody saw it. This is called the Great Pumpkin Debacle. We picked up pumpkins, 1 pumpkin for every 2 kids. We did cross grade level carving. We had 40 parents come in. We carved 110 pumpkins, picked them on a Friday, carved them on the Friday, and then we're having a pumpkin walk for the community on the following Friday. And Wednesday, I went in and my custodian was like, had a mask on and a mop. All our pumpkins, most of them had melted. They literally were pumpkin soup in our school. So what happened is, we're like, okay, we're having this pumpkin walk. We advertised. We have about 60 really soggy, grotesque pumpkins left. They were really ugly. They were great. And so we said, what are we going to do? Well, I said, we can't give up. what are we gonna do? So we found on Route 15, there were pumpkins, pumpkin patch, and two of our teachers, my administrative assistant, ended up picking pumpkins in her stocking feet because her shoes were too tight. They said, you can come get as many pumpkins as you want. It's $1 a piece. So we sent 2 trucks out, loaded up pumpkins, brought them back. I sent an email out, thanks to Rainey, a s'more. It's a special way we're getting information. I think Waterville gets to see the s'mores with the pictures. I sent a squishy face pumpkin, and I said, we need your pumpkin heroes. So we put 75 pumpkins up in front of our building. And I said, please come at the end of the day, grab a pumpkin, go home, carve it with your family, bring it back. The next day I had 7 pumpkins. And it just felt, and they had ownership of what we were doing. It gave, everybody really cared about it. And I think at the event, we may have had, my husband was there, I think he started counting about 150. We had 200 to 300 people that came through our pumpkin walk. But out of adversity comes opportunity. So that is about it. We had parent-teacher conferences, grandparent dinner. We are having our Thanksgiving dinner. Since I've been there, I've had a focus on bringing in our elders, nothing personal, into our school, and grandparents if we have them. David's parents used to come a long time ago, yeah. And we get a lot of families, and it's mostly getting another generation in our building. And that's the goal. Again, they're our community. So we have grandparents dinner on November 19th. And I will be sending stuff out about some of our old school celebrations with their house system. I'd love anybody to come, see, watch, come to any of our things. We always need extra hands. So anyhow, I've heard. Thank you.
Just a couple things I wanted to add. So one, it should be worth noting that the current in Stowe donated everything, like they paid for our busing, they paid for our admission fees, so the school district didn't pay anything. So I want to make sure they get a shout out for their incredible generosity. They had some sort of a grant that was designed to get kids from low income schools to come see their art, but it's worth noting that, so I want to make sure they get their credit. Sydney Hill was also great in the play, Kylie's daughter. She was Mrs. Augusta Group's mother,
So
and she was
good.
hilarious.
So good.
And the last thing I'll say, since I see Carrie Ferrara here, is that we've done, for Halloween for years, we've done this mask parade. What we had never done was an opportunity for kids to wear costumes. And then when Carrie was a parent at Johnson, she had the idea of creating a Halloween costume dance. And it just hit me that you're not a parent of Johnson kids anymore, and we still had a very successful Halloween dance the other night with lots and lots of people there. And so it's really cool when something gets started with community input and it outlasts the community members' time at the school, and we still have it's established tradition now at our school. So thank you for starting that. It's still going strong.
I just wanted to, on behalf of Eric Remmers, the director of Green Mountain Tech, they just had a really great open house this past week. Awesome turnout. It was a chance for community members, families, parents, former Tech Center students to come in, see all 13 programs. It was a really great opportunity to showcase their new engineering program. People had a chance to come in and like take the controller on some of these really cool robots they built. So that was really neat. Forestry, there's been kind of this like re-energizing of the forestry program. They had this super cool like mannequin rigged up, like rappelling from the ceiling. Again, like showcasing some of the skills that they're learning in the program. Culinary was like cooking up a storm for guests that night. It's just really great to see people flood the facility, to see this awesome building, to see all of the programs, really cool conversations happening. Former students who are now parents of current students interacting with program instructors. It was really neat. There's a ton of great work that's been happening in all of the rooms. I have the fortunate ability to go and sneak in and see them and help document some of the cool things that are happening. Beyond just the great instruction and learning, there's also been a ton of community support from Green Mountain Tech. There was like 4 or 5 programs helped with the Stowe Rotary Wheels for Warmth program a few weeks back. The forestry program was just cutting wood to support United Way's winter heating assistance program. It's just been a ton of awesome stuff. So shout out to them, Eric, all of the cool things happening in this building.
I always have an addition. But you caught all of them, almost all of them. I just want to say that when these kids play sports, or they're being honored for National Honor Society, or they're out and about, GMTCC is out doing special projects and things like that, the more board members that can be there and you will identify yourself as a board member and congratulate these young people. They don't get a chance to interact with us unless they're our children, or they're associated with us in some way, and that's, we're a pretty big board. One of the things I love about this district is that when you go to a sports event or you go to the musical, that the school staff and administrators are there. Now, I know under some circumstances, they're asked to come to help out on with some projects, but when your superintendent shows up for 2 shows out of 4 or 5, the first night Beth Ann was there with her family, I felt very bad for you because you looked like you needed to go home to bed.
Oh, I was so tired, but it brought it.
But it's
I
when
woke up.
when leadership and people in positions of perceived status of some sort, but I'm not promoting status, I'm just saying that if people see you there, it makes it all that much more special. And to know that I didn't know that David's son was the lead. I knew his name was William Manning, but I didn't put it together. My daughter had to tell me last night. And I saw 4 shows. And it was phenomenal. So it's just like being on the sidelines, being in the gym and being there for people is really, I mean, on for middle school and elementary school level, or middle school and high school level, it's amazing that if we can identify ourselves to these kids, they understand that these board members are not just sitting at home and coming into board meetings, but they're also engaged in what's going on with the school activities, and they care about what's happening. So I really do appreciate that from the school staff and from the board members. I can make it, not everybody can, so.
I have a quick question, or I guess Rennie might be able to answer it. Wasn't posting in Front Porch Forum, I think it was last night or maybe the night before, asking why the announcements center were in Spanish. And like, I don't remember seeing anything in Spanish.
Yeah, it's funny, Michelle and I were emailing about that earlier. I'm not sure either, what that might have been from. I didn't take the time to see if that was apparent, because it could be that they have like a language setting checked where they don't want one in Infinite Campus, our mass communication platform. That's my guess. Don't know. So we're gonna do some digging, Jen.
You're as mystified as I was.
Yeah, yes.
Anything else? We have a motion to adjourn.
So